Today, we journey to Belgium, a charming European kingdom known for its elegant palaces, medieval towns, and delicious chocolate. But behind this fairy tale facade lies one of the darkest secrets in modern history, a story of greed and cruelty so extreme that even historians struggle to comprehend its scale. It all begins in the late 19th century with King Leopold II, a monarch consumed by a burning desire for wealth and prestige. Belgium was small, lacking the vast resources and colonial empires of its neighbors like Britain and France. Leopold was determined to change that. He dreamed of an overseas empire that would elevate his status and fill his coffers. But he didn't plan to conquer territory with armies or through official government channels. Instead, he chose a path of deception. He presented himself to the world as a great humanitarian. He convened geographical conferences, spoke of ending the slave trade in Central Africa, and promised to bring civilization, Christianity, and free trade to the Congo Basin. He masterfully crafted an image of a philanthropist dedicated to uplifting the African people. European leaders and the American public fell for it. They believed his noble intentions. And so, at the Berlin Conference of 1884, they made a fateful decision. They handed over a vast territory, 80 times the size of Belgium, not to the Belgian state, but to a single individual, King Leopold II himself. The Congo Free State became his personal property, his private kingdom. And what unfolded there was not progress or civilization. It was hell on earth. For years, Leopold's venture was unprofitable. Ivory was the main export, but it wasn't enough. Then, everything changed with the invention of the pneumatic tire. Suddenly, rubber became one of the most valuable commodities on the planet. The Congo was rich with wild rubber vines, and Leopold saw his chance. He declared that all land and everything on it belonged to him. The Congolese people were no longer owners of their land. They were his subjects, his workforce. He imposed impossible rubber quotas on every village. Men were forced to venture deep into the treacherous jungle to harvest the sticky sap from vines. This was a brutal and dangerous task. They had to climb tall trees, often falling to their deaths. They were away from their families for weeks, sometimes months, with little to no food, exposed to deadly diseases like sleeping sickness and hunted by wild animals. And if they failed to meet their quotas, the punishment was beyond imaginable cruelty. To enforce his will, Leopold created a private army called the Force Public. It was commanded by white European officers and filled with African soldiers, many of whom were kidnapped as children or forced into service from conquered tribes. Their orders were simple and barbaric: bring back rubber or bring back death. To ensure that bullets weren't wasted on hunting animals, soldiers were ordered to provide proof for every person they killed. The proof? A severed right hand. This horrific practice soon spiraled out of control. Hands became a form of currency. When a soldier shot an animal for food, he would cut off the hand of a living person to account for the spent cartridge. Soldiers who killed fewer people than their comrades were seen as inefficient. Baskets filled with severed hands were presented to European officials as proof of their brutal work. Entire villages were massacred for failing to meet rubber quotas. In some cases, soldiers would simply cut off the hands of living men, women, and even children to meet their hand quotas without having to kill. It was a reign of terror built on mutilation and fear. The few who dared to witness this horror were forever changed. Missionaries and early journalists who traveled to the Congo sent back reports that were almost too gruesome to believe. They described regions completely depopulated, smoke rising from burned villages, and rivers filled with bodies. They saw men, women, and children with missing hands, living monuments to Leopold's greed. Women were taken hostage and held in appalling conditions, starved and abused, to force their husbands to bring back more rubber. Children were orphaned, their parents killed or worked to death. One British reporter, Edmund Dean Morrell, who worked for a shipping company, noticed something strange. Ships arrived from the Congo laden with rubber and ivory, but returned carrying only soldiers, guns, and ammunition. There was no trade. This was pure extraction, pure plunder. He began a campaign publishing pamphlets and giving speeches, exposing the atrocities. He wrote of a level of cruelty that belonged to nightmares, not reality. Meanwhile, back in Europe, Leopold II cultivated his image as a benevolent king. He used his immense fortune, squeezed from the blood and suffering of the Congolese, to transform Belgium. He built grand avenues, opulent museums, and magnificent parks. He was celebrated as a great philanthropist, receiving awards for his supposed humanitarian work in Africa. The wealth of Brussels, the beauty of Antwerp, the splendor of his palaces all were financed by a genocide. Historians now estimate that during Leopold's 23-year rule, the population of the Congo was cut in half. Around 10 million people died from murder, starvation, exhaustion, and disease. It stands as one of the most horrific genocides in human history, yet for decades, the world remained largely silent. The scale of the crime was so vast and Leopold's propaganda so effective that the truth was buried. Finally, thanks to the tireless work of activists like Morel and brave individuals like the missionary Alice Seeley Harris who took shocking photographs of the atrocities, international pressure mounted. In 1908, the Belgian government, shamed on the world stage, was forced to take control of the Congo away from Leopold. But the king's reign of terror was over. The damage, however, was irreversible. Entire cultures had been shattered. A generation had been traumatized. The demographic collapse was catastrophic. And what happened to the man responsible? King Leopold II died a year later, in 1909. He died peacefully in his palace, one of the richest men in the world, respected and mourned in Belgium. His victims remained nameless and voiceless. The Belgian government continued to rule the Congo for another 50 years, but the foundation of exploitation had been laid. Today, this dark history is a source of intense debate in Belgium. Statues of Leopold II still stand in public squares. Some argue they should be removed, that a man responsible for such crimes should not be honored. Others claim that history, no matter how ugly, should not be erased, but should be contextualized and learned from. But one thing is certain. Behind the polished image of a European king and the beautiful architecture of his country lies a chapter written in blood and tears. A story that reminds us how unchecked power and greed can lead to unimaginable human suffering. The story of the Blood King of Belgium. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please like and subscribe for more hidden histories.